Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. How's your Sunday going?
Yeah, it's just starting for me. So it's 8:30 here. So yeah, it's been good so far.
That's good.
How
It's 1
how about
p.m.
you?
here.
Yeah,
Yeah, good.
afternoon.
So for anyone that's listening, hey Margie, hey Bonnie, um, it is, yeah, it's only morning where Renee is because she's actually in India. So thanks so much for making the time to come and talk to us so early on a Sunday morning.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm an early bird, so you'll get a lot more out of me in the morning than you will at night.
Yeah, yeah, same with me. I'm like a nana. I go to sleep at I fall asleep. If I start watching a movie at 9, I like fall asleep straight away. So,
Yep, I feel ya. I feel ya.
yeah. Cool. Well, let's get into it. Yeah, for everyone that's listening, I really wanted to invite Renee on to have a chat today because, like myself, Renee is super passionate about issues such as anti-trafficking, ending exploitation of children and young women. And she has done some really incredible work in the last 6 years, especially in the anti-trafficking space. To give you a little run through of Renee, I've just got a couple of notes here. But yeah, Renee is currently the Director of Rehabilitation and Aftercare Programs and Mental Health Liaison, and that's with Operation Mercy India Foundation. But when I met Renee, it was in her previous role when she was the International Aftercare Director at Destiny Rescue, which for those watching, if you don't know Destiny Rescue, they are an incredible Australian organisation and charity who rescue and rehabilitate children who have been exploited through the commercial sex trade, through trafficking, and yeah, they give these kids a new life and help also to prevent exploitation against children who are particularly at risk of being exploited, whether it's trafficking or whatever it may be. Renee, she her role consists of mainly providing trauma-informed care to survivors of sex trafficking, counselling, and creating curriculum specifically geared towards online safety, building protection against the harms of pornography, and training teams on all things mental health and psychoeducation. So that was, again, another reason I wanted to get Renee on to share, because we're both very passionate about children's online safety and issues regarding, the harms of pornography, especially against youth. And Renee's background is in social work, psychology, and theology. So that's a little introduction to Renee. And today we're just going to be having a bit of a chat about her work, what led her into this work, how she self-cares in such a, challenging, in a role that can be quite challenging at times, having to deal with consistently pretty dark or traumatic content. And yeah, just in general, having a bit of a chat. So yeah, welcome Renee, and just
Thank
tell us a
you.
bit about, I mean, you are in India and, oh, sorry, I think we're losing you. You still there?
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
still here. Can you hear me okay?
cool. I think the connection was, yeah, I think the connection was just faltering a little bit. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what life has been like for you over the past, 8 weeks or so in India with everything going on with coronavirus and
Yeah.
lockdowns and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but it's crazy everywhere in the world, right? Like our world has kind of been turned upside down.
Mm.
Here we're in lockdowns. We're in our fifth or sixth week. I'm kind of losing track of lockdown. It's been really heavily enforced here. It's a no. It's been called the world's most punitive lockdown because we haven't been able to leave our homes at all unless we're
Oh,
getting essential services like groceries or medical supplies, and even then, that has been restricted as well. So yeah, I haven't left my apartment in a while, so I'm feeling a little claustrophobic. I really love being able to go for walks every day, so yeah, feeling a little bit fidgety. um,
yeah. Yeah, I
and
would be
and
too in
yeah,
that situation.
yeah, and just having to navigate with the team what our new normal is. online because we're not working in the office, but we still have heaps of work to do, if not more work to do now. So yeah, just navigating the whole, virtual office world and getting everyone familiar with that has been what the last few weeks have looked like. And honestly, that will probably be our new normal for a long time.
Yeah, and I remember you were saying to me a couple of weeks ago, or it might have even been in a newsletter you sent me, that it's been pretty scary sort of watching things in India because, we're so lucky over here. We're so blessed to have so much, access to protective wear and things like that. And I think it was you that posted a photo of, I don't know if it was a nurse or someone, but she was treating someone who was sick and she had no, she didn't have a mask, she didn't have any protective wear or anything. And you were saying it was like actually quite scary watching, the risks that these essential workers have to take in order to help people.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch. And, something as basic as a face mask is really hard to get here now. And we take that for granted. So we have many team members on the ground who are putting themselves at risk every day. And not just them, their families, because they're going out and working and then having to come home. They're my heroes. They're amazing. And it's definitely highlighted for me just how privileged I am to be able to stay home and stay safe. Not everyone has that luxury. So while I can feel quite sorry for myself some days being cooped up in my apartment, it is a privilege. And it's seeing my colleagues put, some of them who are doctors and nurses going out every day because they have to, quickly pulls me back in and reminds me that, my situation isn't so bad after all.
I do think it's good to have that perspective, to be able to look at things going on and say, well, I'm actually really blessed. And even though I'm struggling, like what's going on in other countries is really quite scary. And I'm really blessed to be able to sit home and be safe and go and get my groceries and know that I'm pretty much relatively safe as long as I take the right precautions. But on the flip side, I do think it's also important to honor our feelings. And I wanted to ask you this question because I see a lot of people at the moment who are really silencing their pain, and they're saying things like, well, what I'm going through is really not that bad compared to, this person or that person, and having, this happening in my life is not as bad as XYZ. And then those people, they think, oh, well, I just won't talk about this to anyone. I've just got to deal with it on my own because it's really not that big a deal. Have you found yourself doing that a bit at the moment, or have you seen other sort of people close to you doing that as well?
Yeah, I've been quite intentional to try not to do that. I do feel it's important to have perspective, like you've said, but it's important not to minimize what we're going through. Grief looks different to everybody. But it is a real emotion. It's a strong emotion and it needs to be processed regardless of what's causing it. So that has been quite a common conversation that I've been having with clients online. Thankfully, with my job, I can still see clients online. And so, we talk about grief a lot, and I have been hearing that a lot from people. And funnily enough, it's the people who are going through really tough stuff that are feeling the most guilty about complaining about it or venting about it or just, taking the time to process it. But like I said, even if it was what seemed like a small thing to them, it's still worth taking the time to process that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's jump back to the start, because I'm really curious to ask you how you actually got into doing this work. As I said before, I really connected with you only, I'd say, early last year, but you've been doing this work for about 6 years now. So I'm really curious to know what led you into this work specifically in the anti-trafficking sector.
Yeah, I had a change of career pretty late in life. Well, not too late. I was in my late 20s. I had been in retail management for about 12 years prior to that, and then decided I wanted to go back to school and study child protection. And so, yeah, it was through studying and through learning about different social justice issues that human trafficking was highlighted to me. And so towards the end of my first degree, I just started looking at what jobs are available. Like I really just wanted to get in amongst it, but I had no idea where to start really. And so it was just through researching the issue of human trafficking that sexual exploitation in particular kept coming up for me. It kept being highlighted for me, whether it was through, you know, online searches or through conversations with people. It just seemed to be the issue that I was always seeing.
And when that kept coming, sorry to interrupt, but when that kept coming up for you, at first, did you find that you were just really curious about it and you knew this was something that you had to dive deeper into? Or did you have any moments where you were like, oh, this is really serious stuff. I don't know if I'm mentally ready to handle this?
Yeah, there was never that. And I put that down to naivety, if I'm completely honest. Like I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
So when I was initially researching the topic and finding out ways that I could get involved, every part of me was like, yes, like I want to get in the dirt or the mud with these people. I want to help them sort through all of the stuff. I think also because I've seen so many women in my life abused in this way that it really got me. And I think once you start to learn more about this issue, you can't unlearn it. Like you can't unsee what you see in this field. And so, yeah, once I started going down that rabbit warren, I just couldn't pull myself out and I didn't want to. I really just became more and more interested in how I could serve. I knew to get into this field, because it is quite a difficult field to get into, that I had to volunteer. So I started looking for organisations that I could volunteer with and just thought, you know, I'll volunteer for a year and see what happens. I'll reevaluate after a year and see where I'm at. And it became so clear, I think probably 6 months in, I was like, this is it. This is my career. Like, I'm in it for life now. And yeah, I couldn't
it's awesome
imagine
when you
doing
have
anything
those
else.
moments of realization where you're just like, yep, this is it. This is what I want to do. And
Yeah.
like, I think it really is that simple, as you're saying, you know, like you never had those moments where you were going, oh, this is just like too deep. I can't really stand to talk about this stuff. And I think that's a really good indication of when you're on the right track in terms of what you're pursuing, when you have that passion and drive, but also the tenacity as well, because it is really easy to get excited about something new and passionate and go, oh, yep, this is what I want to follow. But
True. Yeah.
being able to do that, like sustain that drive over a long period of time is a good indication that, yeah, you're in the right space. So it's really great to hear that you did, know early on and you were able to keep pursuing it and not sort of, get sidetracked by other things along the way.
Yeah, that's so true. There has been a pattern of that in my life for sure. Like I get excited about new projects. I think a lot of people can identify with that. But this hasn't been one of them. I don't think I could do anything else even if I tried now. I'm in too deep. I've seen too much that I can't unsee. And so, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
Do you have or if you have days where, say, you have a particularly traumatic case that you are working on with somebody and they're sharing a lot of really, really awful things, do you have days where you do come home really drained and you do feel like particularly heartbroken, or you're not quite sure how to process those feelings? Do you ever have days like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think I would be human if I didn't. And I think I'd start to worry about myself if I didn't come home feeling like that sometimes. I've definitely been through times where I haven't felt like that much, and the question has come up of, am I processing things right? Or am I losing empathy? Like if I just heard too much now? And so, yeah, it kind of comes and goes in waves. Sometimes I feel it more and sometimes I don't feel it much at all. But I think regardless of what I'm feeling, it's so important for me to process stuff at the end of every day because the stuff that I hear has a really sneaky way of building up over time without me realizing it. And then it comes back in pretty nasty ways. So if I'm not taking the time to process every day or every morning, I like to journal in the morning, then yeah, I know it's only a matter of time before I crash, really. But yeah, to answer your question more specifically, if there have been really hard cases, I have to be a bit more intentional about my self-care in the evening. So while every part of me wants to just sit down and watch Netflix, it's probably not the best thing for me to do if I'm carrying a pretty heavy story that someone has shared with me. And again, that has been learnt the hard way. I think in the past, I've used things like Netflix or going out with friends to have a drink or two to kind of numb what I'm going through and what I need to process. And that's not helpful at all.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just learning through trial and error that I actually need to come home and be doing something intentionally, whether that be journaling again or doing some kind of art therapy or just putting on some music and colouring in so I can just let my thoughts just kind of sort themselves out. Yeah, I have to be really intentional about that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make. And I think it's completely fair enough to have those moments where you do feel a bit numb.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't worked in the roles that you have, but I know even just with writing about issues like human trafficking or child abuse or domestic violence or things like that, for the past 9 or 10 years now, I have had to numb myself a bit to those issues. And it's interesting because, you know, for me personally, you know, I am what people would call a highly sensitive person. So I identify and have that highly sensitive sort of personality, which is a real scientific, you know, personality trait. And it can be really hard to immerse myself in these really sort of traumatic or hard issues. So I have actually had to learn how to, over time, numb myself to certain things or choose what I am, you know, engaging with. And I guess, yeah, do you, I mean, I know you talk about being intentional with your self-care. Do you find that when you start work each day, do you sort of put on a bit of a shield and kind of intentionally, yeah, I don't know, do you ever feel like you do intentionally sort of numb yourself to certain things, or you're just so used to hearing such a wide range of stories that you're able to kind of like separate yourself from it?
I think I've gotten better at compartmentalizing over the years.
Yeah.
Every now and then a story will trigger something in me, and I think that happens every now and then to many therapists. And we have to be really aware when that happens. But for the most part, I'm able to kind of put my stuff aside and just be present with the client. And when the session has finished, leave it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, not carry it home with me. Yeah, so again, those self-care practices really help with putting that stuff aside. If I'm still thinking about what a client has shared when I get home, I know I've got some work to do to put that aside. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a skill that's so important, but I'm sure that it's one that, you know, it's not a skill that you just learn and it's just there, and you know, you've got to work on it every day, I'm sure, just like all of us have to work on our mental well-being every day. But it is really great to hear some of the self-care practices that you use, like, you know, colouring and journaling and those sorts of things. Tell me a little bit about how you actually started working with Destiny Rescue and how that all came about, and a little bit about what your role entailed there.
Yeah. So they were the first NGO that I joined when I was looking for somewhere to volunteer. So my mum actually told me about Destiny Rescue. She was working for a radio station at the time, and Destiny were advertising through them. So she knew what I wanted to get into, and she heard about Destiny Rescue. And we met up for coffee one day, and she said, "Oh, Renee, you've got to check these guys out. You'll love them." She's like, "Destiny's Child, you should join them." I'm like, I don't think they're looking for anyone. I'd love to join them.
New backup singer.
Yeah.
So I've had people say that to me as well. They're like,
Destiny's Child.
What? You're advocating for them? And I'm like, oh, girl, I don't think they need any advocating for you.
Yeah,
like,
I think they're fine. Yeah. Yeah. So we did a bit of Googling and we found Destiny Rescue, and their values and their mission. I was just like, yeah, this is it. Like, these are the guys. So I applied for a position with them through Facebook. Actually, I was sending out a lot of applications for volunteer positions within that sector. And I was actually procrastinating on Facebook, as you do in between applications. And a position for Destiny Rescue came up, and so I applied. And I got a call an hour later asking for an interview. I'm like, oh, wow, that was really fast.
And really fast. Yep.
And I thought, oh, I didn't even look at what country I applied for. I just kind of thought, yeah, Destiny Rescue is amazing. Like, I'll go wherever. And that was for Thailand. So yeah, had a few interviews. I think there were like 3 in total, and got the green light. And 8 weeks later, made the move, just sold everything that I had and went over for that 1 year commitment. And then, yeah, at the end of 1 year, I renewed my contract for 2 years.
And how old were you when you moved to Thailand and started that contract?
30. Yes, because I'm 36 now, so I had to think about that.
That's amazing. Yeah. Like, that's really huge to make that such a big decision to go to another country, especially a country where you knew you weren't going to have the same sort of comforts as you would have here. And to sell everything and make that decision is like such a, you know, I know it must have been easy for you because the passion was there, but there's still sacrifices that you would have made to make that decision. So yeah, it's really incredible. So I want to just say that, you know, first of all.
Thank you.
When you moved there, because I know I've only been to Thailand once. I went on a team trip with Destiny Rescue. I think it was 2013. And I just know there were like so many funny things that, you know, I saw being there that was just so far out of my realms of what I was used to. And I've had other friends who work with Destiny Rescue, and one of those friends, I'm sure you probably know who I'm referring to, but he just constantly posts about the funny things and the funny signs that he sees over there, and t-shirts that have got you know, t-shirts with really poor English that don't really say what they thought they were going to say. And just, you know, the things you'd see, like he'd have somebody going down the street next to him on a motorbike with like their dog on the back seat of the motorbike and a cage of chickens and their child in front of them, and just all these.
It's amazing how quickly you get used to that stuff and you just think it's normal, and then visitors come over and they're like gawking at, you know, the crazy power lines and the footpaths that are there, but they're not really safe.
Do you remember though, like any of the very first things you saw that you were just like, wow, like what? Like, was it the toilet situation? Because I know for me,
the toilet situation is
like,
brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a rude awakening. Yeah.
Margie will remember that too. Margie's in the comments, and she was on that team trip with me. And there was somebody in our team who just refused like obviously I'm not going to say who it was, and it wasn't Margie, but there was someone in that team trip that refused to use the toilets the way you're supposed to. So like in Thailand, you're not supposed to flush the toilet paper, right?
Right, yeah, you've got to put it in
Yeah.
the bin.
It goes in a little basket beside you. And there was someone in our team who we didn't know, but like they just were not abiding by that rule. And then towards the end of the trip, we were like, somebody said, yeah, so we've had problems in the past with like foreigners, not using the toilets the way they're supposed to here and flushing like a lot of toilet paper. And then there's been issues with the pipes and the plumbing and stuff. And then this person in our team was like, I've been flushing everything. I ain't putting that crap in a, like literally, I ain't putting that crap in a basket. And we were just like, quick, like let's get on the plane and leave before all the pipes burst and they realize that we've like destroyed the place.
Exactly, yeah, those rules exist for a reason.
Yeah, quite funny. But do you remember any like other things, like whether it was food or just like the vehicle and transport situations that really shocked you when you moved there?
I mean, all of that stuff was fun and it all kind of added to the excitement of moving to another country. I think the biggest thing for me was realizing just how out of the normal it was to be a foreigner in a part of Thailand where not many foreigners go. So being stared at all the time took a bit of getting used to. I remember going to a supermarket and it was maybe my first or second week, and as I was going down one of the aisles, there was a cute little Thai boy. He was about 3 years old, just like playing by himself in the middle of the aisle, I guess waiting for his parents to finish the shopping. And he saw me and he looked up and he's like, oh, white person. Like I was a unicorn or something.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, oh yeah, this is going to be weird.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed like any. I've lived in a few Asian countries now and that's always been the case, and you do get used to it, but every now and then, I guess when I'm having a day where I feel a little bit more self-conscious, it gets a little bit annoying sometimes.
Yeah, we all had that as well. Like a lot of people are just like, oh, white person, and like the kids want to come and play with you, and for me, I was just like, oh, this feels weird. Like it feels weird to be idolized in that way. Like, because I don't want to be idolized for being white or whatever. But I guess, that, like you said, they're just not used to seeing that many foreigners in certain parts of the country. So they would have been really, excited. So as you started getting into your role there, can you share like a little bit about what your everyday was sort of like, or whether you did have an everyday sort of job role, or whether it varied a lot from day to day?
Yeah, so I actually started as a social worker with Destiny Rescue. So I started with a caseload of maybe about 15 to 20 girls. Sometimes it would be more than that, sometimes less. So it was filled with just navigating the language barrier, learning about the cultural barriers that exist. And I think it became quite clear to me in the beginning that it's not ideal for foreigners to come over and be working directly with the children. So it was probably the biggest learning curve for me, was realizing that reality. And that's shaped a lot of what I do now and how I operate now. But day-to-day life in the beginning was, meeting with girls and just building that trust relationship with them through fun ways, like taking them out for ice cream or playing games with them. And often I'd have to pinch myself. I'm like, is this an actual job? Like, this is so much fun. But obviously, that's all part of building a relationship with a client, and then you get down to the bit more heavier stuff. So then it was a lot of, digging deeper into their experiences and their family backgrounds, and creating care and reintegration plans. So looking at ways that we can help them heal, but not only heal, grow from their trauma, and also make a plan for what they wanted to do in the future. So a lot of my role was helping plug them into different services that were available in those areas to help them take the steps that they needed to take. So whether it was like enrolling in a vocational training course, or enrolling back into school, or going straight into full-time work. Yeah, so just a lot of being out and about, and networking with different people, and looking for different employment opportunities for girls and training opportunities. And yeah, it was good. So no, every day looked a little bit different, which I love.
And that's such an important part of the rehabilitation process, you know, what you're talking about with, you know, because it's not enough to just rescue these kids or these young women or these, you know, boys or men. Like, they do also need pathways, you know, for their future out of the situations that they've been in. So it's really cool to hear you talk about, yeah, what your day-to-day looked like, and with looking for those employment opportunities for the girls. And I remember when we went over there, a lot of the young women were working in, like, I think it was like crafts, and they were making jewelry, and there were other things as well. I can't quite remember, but what was some of the different, oh, that's right. And there was the Destiny Rescue Cafe as well that was set up, and that was really cool because young women were working in the cafe and learning hospitality skills, and then there was like a hair salon attached to that as well. And I remember getting my hair done by one of the young women, and that was like such a memorable experience for me, because they shared that this particular young woman, she had issues with touch, and so they said she probably won't like give you a massage, like a shoulder massage, while you're getting your hair done or anything like that. And I was like, yeah, that's okay. And they're like, oh, it's just that is like a bit of a trigger for her, you know, which is quite heartbreaking to hear that as well, like to know that somebody can have gone through something so traumatic that they can't even reach out and touch like another human, or especially like can't touch another woman. But it was really great to see, yeah, the different streams of employment that Destiny Rescue were bringing these young women into. Were there any other opportunities like that I might have missed? So I know that there was, you know, the hospitality and the hair salons. Is there any other areas like business, or, you know, helping young women to have their own businesses as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So they were the in-house training opportunities that Destiny Rescue offered, but there was a lot in the community outside of Destiny Rescue that we would plug the girls into. Tailoring was also a pretty popular course. So learning how to sew and do dressmaking. A lot of girls like to do that. Beautician courses were massive. I actually think every girl that first came into our program wanted to do beauty until they learned it wasn't always as glamorous as what they thought. I think because they're like, oh, we get to wear makeup and look pretty.
Okay, yeah.
And then they're like, oh no, actual work is involved. We don't want to do that anymore. So that's funny, like just helping them understand the reality of what they choose can be a bit of a process as well. IT courses actually became pretty big over the last 4 years, I would say. So Destiny Rescue actually partnered with Project Girl Code, and they offer IT training courses for girls who have been exploited. And so they actually ran their pilot program with our girls in Cambodia.
Oh, wow.
And that was a huge success. The girls loved it. There's so many employment opportunities for them in that sector, and it pays really well. And so we were wanting to encourage as many girls as possible to get involved in that. And so, yeah, after we tested it for 12 months with, I think it was like 15 to 20 girls, they all graduated and went on to be really successful in that field. Then that was something that Destiny Rescue continued to offer following that. So, yeah, that was really encouraging.
like when I was there, like I was saying, I saw a lot of these young women going into beauty or like hospitality and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's so awesome to see them being given these opportunities now to go into IT. And for example, the young woman that was that I worked with, along with your help last year, to write her story and put it in the second volume of my book series, Reasons to Live. She went through, I think, one of Destiny Rescue's business programs, wasn't it? And so she was
Yeah.
training now in a hotel as a receptionist. And I thought, wow, that's so amazing. Like for her to go from this background, you know, for anyone out there who hasn't read Fi's story yet, she grew up predominantly in orphanages throughout Thailand, and she's often in dire poverty, couldn't pay, couldn't even afford 3 meals a day. When she graduated out of those orphanages and school, she was working for a certain amount of time in massage parlors, and as many of us know, that's very dangerous work and very risky work, especially for young women in Southeast Asian countries. And she was very lucky to be given an opportunity through Destiny Rescue to get out of that situation and to continue her studies in a field that she really wanted to pursue. And I just thought it was so cool to like see, how far she'd come, and to see her, loving being in this role as a receptionist and actually having a career ahead of her was really exciting. So I think it's so great that, Destiny Rescue is able to provide these pathways now into like IT and business and stuff like that. In the work that you were doing over there, obviously, like, we don't want to go into too much detail, but for people who might be watching this who don't really have an understanding of trafficking, can you just break down like what the different forms of trafficking are? Like, and as an example, I mean, like, a lot of people think of trafficking as a child or a person literally, chained up or held in chains somewhere. Could you share a bit about what some of the personal experiences were of young people or children you worked with, and what different forms of trafficking they were involved in, and what that looked like?
Yeah, so it definitely varies country to country. But I think trafficking has been glamorized by mainstream media to look like you have to be chained up or held captive to be a trafficking victim, which is, in my experience, pretty rare. Actually, it's not that it doesn't happen; it definitely does happen. But more commonly, it's women and children being forced into these fields of work, if you can call it that, for lack of a better option. Like, it's out of complete desperation. A lot of the countries that I've been working in, the communities are living in extreme poverty. Actually, there's probably three main driving factors that would put someone at really high risk of being a trafficking victim, and they were the red flags we'd look out for. So those red flags would be like lack of employment, lack of education, and living in extreme poverty. So if anyone came under those or demonstrated those three risk factors, the chances of them being trafficked was highly likely, because they need money to survive. And often when they don't have an education and when they're desperate, they'll take anything. And so specifically with the girls that I've been working with, being teenage girls, like underage girls, they're getting a lot of pressure from their family to find work. And the only work available is in these, really dodgy karaoke bars, or, like you mentioned, massage parlors, and I mean, that exists in a lot of other forms as well, or going into red light districts. And the parents, there's this, from what I've seen, there's a big don't ask, don't tell mentality around it. So the girls don't talk about what they're doing to earn money, and the parents don't ask them what they're doing to earn money. I would say that most of them know. They definitely find out once we start working with them. We don't go and tell the parents unless we have permission from the girls to do that. But we definitely are very intentional about raising awareness about human trafficking and sexual exploitation and how that happens.
Yeah, and I think, that's a really interesting point you brought up about the pressure from parents, because I know that that was something that really shocked me when I went over in that team trip in 2013. And, I was hearing stories about, young women who were being pushed by their families to go into this line of work because they wanted, they needed money. And sometimes I think one of the stories that stuck out for me was someone from Destiny Rescue went into a hill tribe village, I think it might have been, or a small village, and you could see the parents and some of the brothers sitting around watching TV on this new TV that they had in this quite rundown little shack or house. And the daughter is, essentially being raped every day in these karaoke bars or parlors so that they can have this brand new TV. And they didn't, like, some of the stories that Destiny Rescue were talking about were that the parents sort of didn't care because there was this expectation that the daughter, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the oldest daughter had a duty to provide for the rest of the family, and that included like her brothers as well. And one of the stories that they told us was about one of the brothers. He used to walk around. I think he had like a really long fingernail on one finger, and I don't know if you've heard this story, but apparently that was a sign of wealth or being of higher socioeconomic status. And all the while his sister was having to was being exploited in these awful ways. And he was walking around like, yeah, I'm the man kind of thing. And there was just not much understanding or care from the other family members about the emotional trauma, as well as the physical trauma that was being done to these girls' bodies in order to provide for their families. And that was just really shocking to me. Like, I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that parents or siblings would willingly put one of their family members in that position just to have more status or more wealth. It was very eye-opening to hear those stories.
Yeah, it is. It's difficult to process. I have a lot of empathy for the families. I don't condone the decisions that they make at all.
Yeah.
But I have seen, families that do spend their money on luxury items like that when they can't afford to buy food. I've come to understand it is a form of escapism for them. Like, they don't want to be where they are. And so having a TV or, a new phone or something that they can do to kind of numb themselves, like that's a way of numbing as well, and to escape, is how they're surviving. And so that really only changes through education. And so when we're coming alongside families, first they need to understand exactly what it is they're putting their child into.
Yeah.
And more often than not, when they fully understand the scope of what's been happening, they're less inclined to do it again. But then, further education is needed on how to manage money well, like really practical things, how to manage money well and how to start thinking long term. Because again, these communities, because they're living in such extreme poverty, they can't see far into the future, that they're living day to day. And so there's not much planning involved as a family. And so we're quite intentional, especially where I am now with OMIF, quite intentional about spending time with families and helping them start to think about their future again and build hope for the future and set short-term and long-term goals, because we know that's the only way they're going to be able to live sustainably and safely long-term.
Yeah, and that's so important because we have these widespread issues of trafficking around the world. There's the stats vary, but one of the stats I read was that there's something like 45 million slaves in the world today, and I think 5.5 million of those are children, which is, you know, just absolutely devastating. But we do need to also know how to better equip these communities to tackle this issue themselves, rather than, I mean, it's like fantastic the work that so many people in organisations like Just Sea Rescue are doing. But yeah, it's not enough for us as foreigners to just come in and try and fix the issue or rescue, you know, kids where we can. Like, it is so important as well to equip those communities to, one, understand what is actually being done, like the long-term damage that's being done to their children or their community members, and then how they can, like you said, like how they can manage their finances, how they can get the assistance they need in order to live, you know, better lives, so that they don't have to resort to this kind of stuff. So I think that's really important. One question I had for you is, and this might be hard to answer, but from all of the cases that you've worked on in the last 6 years, is there one particular story maybe that stands out to you from a young person who maybe was rescued out of one of these situations, and you've worked with them to help them on their journey out to the other side, and seen them sort of come full circle and be flourishing and thriving again? Is there like one particular story that really stays with you?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, actually. It is hard to pin down one story. I will say the last 2 to 3 years of my work with survivors has really been a game changer for me. So I think it has been about 3 years, I started, myself and my team started introducing a post-traumatic growth framework. So that's not just treating the illness or the negative effects of trauma, but looking at the strengths. It's kind of like a strengths-based approach to trauma. Basically, what the research is saying about post-traumatic growth, it's pretty new in the field of psychology and trauma. Like, it's maybe about 10 years of research has been collated to show that survivors of trauma who have not only survived, but they're actually thriving now, actually have 5 key characteristics that are common across all of them. And they have demonstrated like a deepening of their spiritual life. So they've acknowledged that there's something bigger than them, and they're able to draw strength and hope from that. They have a sense of their own inner strength. So they're able to say, you know, if I can get through that, I can get through anything. They're able to see new opportunities. After they've been through trauma, they're looking at things a little bit differently and able to see ways that they can use their past experiences to serve the people around them. They have a deeper appreciation for life, so they're able to look at life with positivity, and so they're able to see things that they're grateful for. And they have deeper relationships, so they're able to, you know, acknowledge the significance of relationships in their life. And so since learning about that research more and more, we actually started incorporating that into our trauma-informed care practice. And so we would, in our work with the girls, help them develop in those 5 key areas. And since doing that, I have been blown away by the progress that I've seen in these girls' lives, and so quickly. And so I remember the first group of girls that we started doing this with, for one of the characteristics, like developing a sense of new opportunities, we thought, okay, we're going to turn this into a community development initiative in our residential care homes. And so what we did was pose to the girls, okay, we're going to give you a project. We want you to think about ways that you can serve your community. It's your project. You get to do whatever you want. We will give you the resources that you need to do it. But this is going to be completely led by you. And they took it and ran with it. So the first idea that they came up with was, we want to clean up our local park area. it's a beautiful park, but it's always littered and the toilets are disgusting and no one wants to go there because of it. So they actually made their own bamboo bins, went armed with the bins and brooms and scrubbing brushes, and this army of like 6 teenage girls went to the park and just started cleaning up the park area and scrubbing down the toilets. This was their idea, not ours. Like, I don't think we could pay teenagers to do that in Australia. I'd love to see it happen though.
It would be a form of punishment for most.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Most people, you know, like I don't think I would want to go to my local toilet block and start cleaning up. Like, I've seen some of those places.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to do it. Yeah. But they're doing it with smiles on their faces. Like, they were so happy to do this. And afterwards, the feedback that we got was, we feel really proud of what we did for our community, and there was language around, you know, we've got such a sense of accomplishment and we want to do more. And so that turned into visiting a local aged care home and spending the day with an aged care community, like playing games and singing songs and doing arts and crafts. And one of the girls afterwards came up to me and she said, I want to do this for my job. I want to do what you do, be a social worker. And I'm like, yes, that is the dream. Like, if we can see survivors not only healing and growing, but actually using what they've been through to serve others, and to be working in this sector, that's a dream come true. So that's definitely been a career highlight for me. And since incorporating post-traumatic growth into my practice, it has changed everything. I've really seen healing and growth take place so much faster than I ever thought possible.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense because, I mean, all the research out there has shown that people who, like, you know, people who volunteer or people who are passionate about a certain cause and really want to serve that cause have such higher well-being than those who don't. And, you know, there's been many studies and different forms of research out there that have really looked into the phenomena of, I call it, you know, volunteerism, and finding that people who volunteer and choose to serve in some way and focus on something, you know, bigger than themselves and really put all their time and effort into helping somebody else, or, you know, particularly using their own personal experience to help someone else's journey be a little bit easier, just promotes, you know, the most incredible, like well-being, and it really accelerates their growth and their well-being. So I'm not surprised at all to hear about that, but I think that it's really important to have that, you know, as part of the process, as you said, because we don't want to just rescue people out of traumatic environments and then put them in a comfortable environment, you know, like, here's a new house and here's a nice job, you know, like, and we also don't want to just sort of help them to minimize the trauma that they've been through. Like, we really do want them to thrive as well. And that's, you know, such a big part of my work as well. And I know that's why you and I have a shared passion about these issues is, like all the clients that I work with in my work as a writing mentor, you know, it's so important for us to really highlight the journey that they've been on, you know, from being in that really low place to gradually, you know, moving up to being a survivor, you know, and then moving up to thriving, and, you know, looking at how they actually made that transition, you know, from victim to survivor to thriver, and what was part of that process. And, you know, for every single one of them, I'd say, or, you know, close to every single one of them, their healing and their ability to thrive has really come about from, definitely deepening their spiritual understanding, like you said, and that doesn't have to be a religious thing, but just understanding that there's bigger things out there in the world, and that they have a role in, you know, playing a role in somebody else's, you know, healing journey, and also like looking at how they can help somebody else, so that it takes them out of that self-centered mindset or that self-centered place where they're just like focusing on their own trauma or their own failures because they're looking at how they can actually help someone else. So that is such an important part of the healing journey. And I think that's so beautiful, like that story of that young woman looking at you as a mentor and a role model and knowing that, not only knowing that it was possible for her to do something like that, but like also having that inner belief that she could actually,
yes,
put her mind to doing this in the future.
That's huge.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I just want to pause for a minute and see if anybody has any questions for you. Because I know that we had a question sent through yesterday, which I'm going to ask you in a minute. But
sure.
If anybody has any questions, please, just pop them in the comment box and I will ask Renee. I'm going to ask you this question in 1 second. Just give me one moment.
Sure.
Double check. I always have this fear about like the phone just dying, so I was just double checking that the power was on the power switch was on. I'm going to read you this question that was sent through from Bonnie yesterday while we wait to see if there's any more questions. So Bonnie said, I'd love to know what Renee's theory of trauma is and some examples of practice in preventing re-traumatization during the healing process.
Nice question. That's got to be from a therapist.
Yeah. That's from a social worker. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
My theory of trauma. I think what's been foundational for me is knowing that trauma lies in the body. So even if we don't remember what has happened, our body has, and that causes physical reactions that can happen days after the event, months, or even years. And we might not understand where those reactions are coming from. And so it's important for me as a trauma-informed care provider to help others understand how they're holding trauma in their body and how trauma has actually changed the structure of their brain. And because it's changed the structure of the brain, it's changed the way they see the world. Like they're not going to be able to see things the way that they did before. And that can be good and bad.
Yeah.
And they're living in their bodies differently than they were before trauma. So it's really important for me to help my clients understand what's happening on a physical level. And really the I guess antidote to trauma is to start at a physical level. So first, to learn what's happening, to learn how to listen to your body, and to practice tools that help change those responses to stress and anxiety. So, like deep breathing to slower the heart rate down, and practicing gratitude to help release the happy chemicals in our brain, and exercising to release those endorphins, to get the chemicals flowing that need to flow to help us survive and thrive. Yeah. So that's really what informs a lot of my practice, and that's done a lot through psychoeducation as well. So learning about the effects of trauma on a physical level first, and then how it affects us on an emotional level and how it affects us mentally. So how we process thoughts and how we express our thoughts is also affected by trauma. So yeah, I would say that is pretty foundational to everything that I do. In answer to the second part of the question, how to avoid re-traumatization, also awesome question. There are a few things I think that need to be kept in mind. The first one's pretty obvious, like building trust with the client. Like, you can't go straight into the tough stuff unless you have a relationship with someone. If I was a complete stranger meeting with a client saying, hey, share your story, it's probably not going to go well. So building trust and taking that time to really just help the client feel comfortable. Off the back of that is the same with sharing a story. So while them sharing their story is an important part of the process as well, it's important for me to help the client understand that they don't have to start with the big thing. They can just share a little story, and then let the client lead the way in how much they want to share or not share, and just be really patient with that. I've unfortunately seen times where girls have been interviewed to get a story and really tough questions being asked that they're just not ready to answer. And often with the power imbalance, they feel like they have to answer, and that has been heartbreaking to see. So I think I learned pretty early on my role as an advocate for survivors of sexual exploitation as well, in helping people understand that you can't do that. You can't just go in and ask someone to tell their story, because they might tell their story because they feel like they have to, and it does a lot of damage.
Oh, I so agree with that. And it was just reminding me of last year when I was working with you and Micah from Destiny Rescue, and we were working together to interview this young woman and tell her story. And I remember I was, like, it's so important to me that the questions that I ask are done with sensitivity. And obviously we want to tell each person's story in a way that really connects, that the reader can really connect to. We want the reader to feel, their grief and their heartache, and we want them to feel their joy and their passion as they come out the other end. But there is a way to do that, to make a story really powerful without sensationalizing it or making it really graphic. And that's something that I hate, is when people, when you see a story used purely for clickbait or to sensationalize it. And even with like doing this work for the last 10 years, with freelance journalism and working as a writing mentor for trauma survivors, even still, like, I remember working on those questions for Fi, and I was just like, oh gosh, like, I hope she's okay with answering this. And I was trying to make sure that everything was asked sensitively. And I remember, like, the first round of, because for anyone that's watching, like, the process that we had to go through was that I wrote out the questions, I sent them through to Renee and another team member, and then they translated it or asked those questions to this young woman and then translated them back to English for us. And then I had to sort of work to sort of put, these answers together in a way that kind of worked and flowed from one, point to the next. And there was only, like, we had to do about 2 rounds of that because there's only so much information you can get via, typing out questions the first time around. And so the second time around, I did have to go a bit deeper and ask a little bit more about how she felt when she was in the massage parlors. And there was something that was said to me that really stuck with me. And I said something like, I remember asking one of the team members, and I said, she seems like she was quite lucky in the experience she had in this massage parlor, and that she said nothing bad really happened. And, she was quite lucky while she was there. And I said, there wasn't really a lot to tell about that part of her life where she was there before she was, like, given this opportunity to get out and go on to something better. And the staff member said to me, well, it's not uncommon for, survivors of sexual exploitation to really downplay what they've gone through and to not actually tell you the extent of what happened, not just because they, don't trust you or don't want you to know, but just that they also, I guess they either don't maybe recognize it as being as bad as it was, or they still feel scared or a bit shameful about telling somebody what actually happened. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, of course. I sort of didn't think about the fact that maybe she was downplaying it, and that, maybe she was lucky and nothing much happened, or maybe she was really downplaying it because she sort of didn't want to make a big deal about it. But but you know, it brings me back to what you were saying before about, yeah, you can't just go in there and hound, you know, survivors with all these really in-depth questions, because they're either not going to be ready to answer it, or it's going to be really traumatic for them to have those questions asked, or yeah, they're just not ready to ask it. So I think that's a really important thing for people to be aware of, that you can't force, you can't rush these sorts of things, and you do have to go delicately with them.
Yeah. And I think that's it, it brings us to the next point, in that, you know, everyone who works with a survivor of trauma needs to be trauma informed. Like, they need to understand how trauma works.
Yeah.
So we have in our residential homes, both with Destiny and with the organization I'm with now, there's like cooks in the home, house parents. They're not necessarily therapists, but they all have an understanding of trauma. Like, I'm very intentional about providing training for everyone and anyone who has contact with the children that we bring into our care, because if they don't understand trauma, it's so easy to trigger them just in the way that we respond. So, you know, of course, we see a lot of really negative behaviors, like a lot of disruption. We deal with depression, anxiety, aggression, like lots of different stuff comes out. And if we're reacting to that, it's just going to make it worse. And it's easy to react to it if we don't understand how trauma affects us.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really important for everyone to be trauma informed. We can't train everyone. Like, support systems can often re-traumatize a victim. Like, if a girl or a client, it could be a guy as well, is giving a statement to a police officer could handle it the wrong way. So for us, it's really important that there's always an advocate there, ready to intercede or shut it down or educate that person a little bit before they go any further. Yeah, so that's really important. I think another really important one too that has definitely come to the forefront of our minds over the last few years is media literacy. Because clients can be re-traumatized just by constant exposure to mass media. You know, with highly sexualized scenes that are in today's TV shows and movies and music videos, like far out, there's a lot of really aggressive sexual themes in music videos. So we need to help our clients navigate through that world safely and be mindful consumers of mass media, and to know what they can do to protect what they're seeing, protect their minds from what they're seeing every day. So I think now more than ever, that's a really important part of protecting our clients from re-traumatization.
Absolutely. No, excellent. I'm just going to see if anyone else has any questions. If anyone would like to ask any questions while we have Renee here, please send one through. Bonnie says, thanks very much, Renee. Fantastic points.
That was a great question. I loved that.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, yes, such a good question. And you can tell, you can tell that Bonnie is a social worker.
Yes.
Recently graduated. I'm just looking up something at the moment that I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
So, you know, April, we've just finished April, obviously, and April was Child Abuse Awareness Month, which is why I thought, it'd be so great to chat to you about all of these issues, you know, that primarily affect young people. And with, you know, May is now Domestic Violence and Mental Health Awareness Month. So that was another reason why I thought this was a great time to ask you about all of these questions. Yeah. And we've also got Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, which is coming up very soon on May 9th. So yeah, it's a really good time to be talking about, you know, children's well-being. And I think it was really great what you asked, what you were saying about, ways to sensitively work with trauma survivors, particularly young people, so that we don't re-traumatize them. now I could talk to you like for hours and hours, but we probably should wrap up soon. So I did want to ask you one final thing. So another area, you know, that you and I are really passionate about, obviously, is children's safety, and particularly children's online safety.
Mm,
Um, I'd say, you know, there's a fair few people who follow my pages who will also be aware of the fact that children are being exposed now at younger and younger ages to online pornography, and that is having really dramatic and damaging impacts on young people's mental well-being and their attitudes towards sex and women, and all those sorts of things. I saw a stat on Instagram just yesterday, and I think it said that around 22% of pornography users now are children 10 years of age and younger, which
yeah.
is horrific, you know, like, I mean, regardless of whether anyone watching this is a pornography viewer themselves or not, I think we should be able to quite clearly say that children do not need to see pornography and that it's not healthy for them to do so. You know, and you'd be aware of this as well, is that the issue is that older generations still tend to think of pornography as being, you know, like a sexy centerfold or something like that. But
Yeah.
what, apparently we've got 2 minutes remaining. We must have a time limit on our live features.
Sneaky.
Sneaky. So I'm just going to ask you really quickly, what's maybe like your top tip for parents who want to do more to ensure that their children are safe online? What's a simple thing that people can action?
I think there are a few things that parents can action straight away. And I just want to say the responsibility doesn't solely lie on parents, but it is a big part of a parent's role. It needs to come from educators, medical health practitioners, everywhere. Like it needs to be a multi-pronged education effort. But things that you can do at home is get involved. Like, make sure you're seeing what your kids are seeing. I cannot tell you how many messages have come through over the last few weeks of parents mortified at what their kids are seeing online, because we're at home now, we're in lockdown, we're spending a lot more time online, and we're seeing more of what our kids are exposed to. And parents have been sharing stories of, you know, one child was on a colouring in site and a pop-up ad came up for porn, and their child clicked on it, obviously because they're curious, they're not deviant, they're kids, like they just want to see. And it took them to this porn site with really graphic visuals, and they stay with us. And so it's important for parents to be aware how quickly a child can see stuff.
Excellent.
So seeing what they're seeing, installing software like to block pop-up ads would be a pretty good start.
It is so important for parents to be aware of what their kids are viewing online, because obviously it's not solely the responsibility of parents, but it is quite alarming how many parents just don't want to even entertain the thought of their child being exposed to, you know, harmful images. They just either want to bury their head in the sand, or they're like, oh, my child won't see that. That won't happen to my kid, because, you know, we have filters on our phones or tablets, or they're a good kid, you know, they know not to look at naughty things. But the reality is that kids are now exposed to pornography from others, you know, from their fellow students when they're on the buses. I know I've heard of kids, just going to school in the morning on the bus, and another kid has shown them bestiality pornography, you know, and that's maybe the first, you know, they haven't even had their first kiss yet, and they're seeing content that is that extreme. I've heard of kids who are obviously, you know, we've got kids who are being abused in the home, either by a parent or an extended family member, and they are then also being shown pornography as part of that abuse. And so then they're going and showing that to other kids, or they're acting it out on other kids because they think that this is normal, because, you know, that's when you're a child, it's not easy to distinguish between what is right and what's wrong and what's normal and what isn't. So I think it was good what you were saying just about it is important for parents to take control, be aware of what apps their kids are using, what platforms they're using, how long they're on social media for each day. Also, another thing that I want to add is that a lot of parents are now allowing their very young kids to have Instagram accounts, and they're thinking that because the account is private, that their child is safe, you know. But Collective Shout were recently doing a bit of an experiment or an investigation into how easy it is for predators to, send pornography to young people or to start grooming young people through Instagram. And they were finding that even on the profiles that are private, that doesn't stop someone from messaging that child. So, you know, a man or a person can message that child, private message that child, even with a private account. They can send them, you know, pornographic images, or they can start talking to them and grooming them into things. And it's very easy for a child to also delete these conversations before a parent has seen them. So even if a parent has access, you know, their child's password, doesn't mean they're going to see what's on there. So it is important for parents to have these conversations with their kids and have conversations in age-appropriate ways about what to do when they see something online that makes them feel uncomfortable, or something that is a private image or a naked image. Just to finish with, can you share maybe, just to finish off what you were sharing before about easy steps that parents can take to try and keep their kids safe online?
Yeah, probably the next thing would be create a plan. Well, first of all, share a definition with your child of what pornography is. Because it's not a matter of if they're going to see it, it's when they're going to see it. It's everywhere. This is a fact that we can't ignore anymore. If your child has a device, it is only a matter of time before they see pornography. That's just the harsh reality that we all have to face. So probably the most common question I get asked is, what age is appropriate to start talking about this? And my advice is, as soon as they have a device, talk to them about what pornography is. And for some kids, that's really little. And so I just want to say, for any parents who do see this, you don't have to be mortified by this thought. You don't have to talk to your child about sex to teach them what pornography is. You can just give basic definitions like what you shared before, Jazz, like people who are naked, or, you know, the video is focusing on people's private parts or parts of the body that are usually covered by a swimsuit. These are harmful things, and these are things that we need to have a plan for what to do when you see them. And so giving a child a plan is key in how to battle this. So if they see it, they know what to do. So that might be just something as simple as closing down whatever it was, or turning off the game, or turning off the app, or even just flipping it upside down, and then going to mum or dad and telling them what they saw, or, you know, and creating a plan of what to do to distract themselves, or to do a different activity. So it can just be like a simple 3-step, like, this is what you do when you see a bad picture. Actually, there's some amazing resources out there too. Good Pictures, Bad Pictures is a book that I recommend to all parents to read with their kids.
Ask you about that, because I know I love following the work of eChildhood. They have some really great resources, as well as Youth Wellbeing Project. Collective Shout is another really good one to follow. And yeah, there are a lot of really great resources out there. The book that you just mentioned, was it Good Pictures, Bad Pictures?
Yes, by Kristen Jensen. It's available on Amazon. And yeah, like you said, eChildhood. I'm actually partnered with Youth Wellbeing Project to do online safety stuff here in India. Awesome. So they have amazing resources available. So definitely check them out.
Yeah, I think it's really good for parents to feel empowered and to know that they can have these discussions with their kids, and it's okay to talk to your kids about pornography. And like Renee said, you don't have to even use the P word of pornography. You know, you can just talk to them about what to do. Like Renee and I were saying, if they see naked pictures or private pictures, there's someone that I follow online, and she is a online child safety expert and educator. And she said that when she went into a primary school recently and asked about, and she was doing a presentation on, what to do when you see private pictures or pictures that make you feel uncomfortable. And when she broke it down like that, she said at the end of that presentation, before these little kids, I think they were in year 4 maybe, or I think they were around 8 years old, before they left, she had about 10 kids come to her and said, hi, miss, like, we just want to know, like, what should I do? Because I saw these photos of somebody's private parts online, and, I saw this video of an animal and a person, and, like, I don't understand what that means. And she said, like, it's horrific, like something like 10 8-year-old children coming forward and saying that they had seen pornographic images, and they didn't know how to make sense of it in their head. And none of these kids had told their parents because they didn't know how to have that conversation. So I think it is really important for parents to, like you said, make a plan, maybe make a 3-step plan of what to do when you see images that make you feel uncomfortable. And someone, Gabrielle's just said, such good advice about making.
Hi, Gabby.
Yeah, it is really important for parents to be empowered and know that, yeah, you actually need to have these conversations with your kids, and you do need to start early, because kids as young as 4 years old are seeing pornography and being impacted by that. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours about this, but I just want to say thank you so much for making time to talk today.
Thanks for arranging it. It was a lot of fun to unpack this stuff with you.
Good. I'm so glad. Yeah, it's been great to hear, and I'll know for the future about Instagram's time limit.
Yeah.
Trying to wrap this up so we don't talk forever. But can you just let everybody know where they can follow you and where they can keep in touch with you to know more about the work that you're doing and your advocacy and all of those sorts of things?
Absolutely, yeah. So I post quite regularly on Instagram, actually all the social medias, so Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
All the socials.
Yeah. I'm definitely one for using social media to raise awareness. So yeah, just Renee Chopping on Instagram and Facebook, and Twitter, I think, is exactly the same. So yeah, just type in my name and you'll see that come up. I do post a lot of tips about online safety and what to be aware of around the issue of pornography. So I really have a burden for parents because it's a big job, and I really feel that sense of responsibility that they're all carrying in this digital age. And so, yeah, I do try and post as much stuff as I can to help parents out. So yeah, be sure to check it out.
Yeah, awesome. Please, everybody, do go and follow Renee, and she has a website too. Is that just reneechopping.com?
Sure is.
Yep. Awesome. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a somewhat peaceful day in India. Like, I know that you usually have music and chanting going off like most hours of the day.
Yeah. Thank you again. It's been a real joy to do this with you.
You're so
I look forward to doing it again.
Sounds good. All right, you enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks everybody for staying on three rounds of
yes, well done,
Instagram
everyone.
Live. So yeah. All right, take care. Renee.
Bye.
See you later. Bye. All right, thank you so much everybody for staying on all of these chats. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to DM me. I can always, put something up in response if you've got any further questions, or I can forward it to Renee and we can, put those up in on my feed or in the stories. So hope you all got a lot of insight out of that. I would love to hear, what your thoughts were. Please feel free to send me a DM. And I hope everybody's having a wonderful Sunday. Make sure you get out in the sun if you can, if it's sunny where you are. If it's not, try to get outside for some fresh air. All right. Love to all of you. Have a great weekend. Bye.